Hey guys, Tomboy601, and today we have ourselves a tier list. We're going to be doing these over the next couple of days. I get questions all the time of like, hey, what ships should I grind? And I figure I'm going to go ahead, pause, take this moment at the end of 2022, at the beginning of 2023, and go through all of the tech tree lines and talk about what their strengths, the weaknesses, rank them in a tier list so you have an idea of what you want to look for. We're going to be ranking them kind of off of the tier 7s because yes, we have tier 8 right now, but it's not really fully fleshed out. Not every line has a tier 8, and I would really love to be able to rank them off of the legendaries, but we know not every single line has their legendaries implemented. So tier 7 feels like the correct spot. So that's where we're going to go. So with all of that said, let's go ahead and dive on in to our first one, and that is the American Destroyer line. The Fletcher, I'm putting it at A tier. I think Fletcher is one of the better lines in this game, especially if you're just starting out. The gunboat performance, it is a line that teaches you how to play destroyers. You get decent torpedoes, which, you know, most of the time in most of the line, they are right at your concealment level, so you have to kind of target ships that are pushing into you if you want to hit them with torpedoes. You have fantastic gunboat performance, which will allow you to gun down nearly any of the other in any of the other destroyers in a straight up fight. You have long duration smokes that allow you to hide and kind of take a breath, take a breather, allow the battle to move on past you, to kind of forget about you in your smoke or to focus you in your smoke. I think Fletcher is the definition of the beginning destroyer. And I think it teaches a lot of great fundamentals through that line. So that's why it's going in at A tier. I don't think it's quite the best just because it doesn't have a ton of utility, but I think it's quite up there. Next up, we move to the Japanese and Kagero. We're putting it down at B tier. I think Kagero, it is one of the other OG lines of destroyers, and it is, in essence, the exact opposite of the Americans. It is all about concealment. It is all about just flinging torps, but you find yourself very much lacking up against other destroyers usually. So I've put it down at B tier. I think personally this might come into my own bias. I'm not a huge torpedo boat person. I'm not a huge fan of just torp boats. I like the gunboats, and I think Kagero, while it is a fantastic line and a cornerstone to the way destroyers play, I find myself going to the Fletcher line way more. In conjunction, or in the exact opposite flavor of Kagero, is Akazuki and its line. Akazuki is the gunboat focused line of the Japanese destroyers. The problem is with this line is it only becomes gun focused at Akazuki, at tier 7. Before that, you get like slightly better guns, but you're still mainly a torpedo boat. So it's definitely a very difficult class to grind, very difficult line to grind, because you're like, oh, it's a gunboat. We're gonna run it as gunboat. We're gonna run it as gunboat, and it just doesn't. That line just doesn't like to perform as a gunboat until you get to the reward, which is Akazuki, which is why I'm putting it down at C tier. I think Akazuki overall, fun ship, definitely a bit difficult to play. Part of what allows Fletcher to be so good is its maneuverability in its gunboat. And Akazuki, it'll gun down a Fletcher like no one's business. The problem is, if you're turned wide enough to use all of your turrets and that Fletcher got off its torps, you may be going down because Akazuki does not have the maneuverability to really turn out of the way of any torpedoes. It is a long boy. And I find that line, one, doesn't really get interesting up until Akazuki. Before that, like I said, it's very much the same thing as Kagero. And then once you get to Akazuki, there's some steep learning curves you have to hit, but they are totally fun. The rapid firing 100mm guns are just beautiful. They are a joy to play, and once you master them, they are quite fun. But overall, I'm putting Akazuki down at S tier. Next up, we have the British destroyers, and this is going to S tier. I think the British destroyers are the best in the game. First off, the grind up the whole line is a joy. The utility that the German destroyers, or not the German, the utility that the British destroyers bring is only matched really by the Germans. You get yourself some of the best smokes in the game. They're short duration. You get lots of charges of them, so you have plenty of turns to disengage if you want to. You have that sonar, which can allow you to use it defensively in the smoke, or if you know you're not going up against like a German boat, to use it offensively, charging in. You have great guns. You have decent torps. Like, it is the full package. And I think Lightning and the British destroyers are just absolutely fantastic, and they are one of the lines you should really, really go out there and enjoy. Next up is the other set of hybrid destroyers, and that is the Germans with the Z-23. The Germans are very much like the British, but I find myself not enjoying them as much. They have a couple of advantages and disadvantages. They do gain a longer range sonar at the cost of duration, which allows them to be a little bit more offensive. Their guns do have quarter HE pen, which means you are going to be able to damage more ships with your HE. But you do have the longer duration smokes, which I think are a little bit worse in this case. And overall, if you gave me a choice between the Brits and the Germans, I'm taking the British ships, but I still think the Germans, the Z-23, are still fantastic boats, and they are a joy to play, and they are some of the best destroyers out there. Next up, we have the French in Le Fantasque. And Le Fantasque is getting a D. It's going down in D tier. Right now, at the end of 2022, this boat does not know what it needs to be. Previously, the French line was more of a torp boat, but then the torps got nerfed. And then we were told they're supposed to perform like gunboats, but they don't have the unique damage saturation that they do over on PC, and they only have one main battery reload booster as of now. We are supposed to get a French destroyer rework in the second week of the new year, so check out the channel to see if that has improved these boats. But where we are, and especially with the current meta, the French DDs, high speed, longerish range guns, no smoke, bad AA. And right now, where we are in the game, in this game's life cycle, where we have so many planes out there, you kind of need an option to be able to deal with the planes, whether that's smoke to disengage or that's good AA. And these boats don't have it. So you have that combined with the fact that they're kind of initially balanced to be sort of torp boats and sort of gunboats, and now they kind of have to be all gunboats, but they haven't really gotten the tools necessary to gunboat it. Yeah, the French line, it's a pain to grind through, and hopefully with the coming rework, they become a lot better. After the French, let's go ahead and talk about the first line of Russian destroyers. The Russian destroyers. They are similar to the French destroyers in a couple of ways. Mainly that they are designed to be played at longer range. The Tashkent line, which we're throwing in B tier, they have a couple of weird things. One, you don't really get non-suicide torps. And by that, I mean, until Tashkent, you are going to be spotted if you want to use your torpedoes. They are weapons of last resort. As a result, you play Tashkent from afar. It's a very different play style for a destroyer, and it's one that is very complementary to the French. However, you have a couple more tools. You tend to have a little bit thicker armor on these boats. You tend to have some better you tend to have some better commanders overall, I think, to deal with it, and you have smoke to be able to disengage when you need to disengage. So that's why I'm throwing the the OG Russian destroyers at the B tier. After them, though, we have the alternate line of Russian destroyers that's headed up by Udaloy. And these Russian destroyers play much more traditionally, but as a result, I feel like they lose their specialization. These guys trade off a bit of that range in exchange, get torpedoes that they can launch from stealth. That is the sort of trade-off of this line. They are definitely easier to play, but once you've mastered them, I don't think they are as good as the original line, which is why these guys have been put down in C tier. They're very similar, but they kind of have just that one little tweak that doesn't make them I think doesn't make them as good as an overall package. Our second to last boat, or our second to last line, is the Pan-Europeans. Pan-Europeans will be represented by Östergötland, and it is going up in A tier. I think the Pan-European ships are fantastic. I think they're what the Russian and what the French ships want to be. I think they're the ultimate expression of the idea of long-range gunboat, and especially for the French, no smoke. I think this line fixes everything you want with the French line. You get great long-range guns, decent speeds, long-range torpedoes that, yes, they don't hit as hard, but they're quickly reloading. You get to throw them out. Oh, and they have fantastic AA. You are a threat, and yes, you are vulnerable because you can't be you don't have smoke, so you can't disengage. But if you master these boats, they are some of the most fun out there. I do have to say, it is a struggle getting up there. Once you get to Skåne and Östergötland, that's where the real line starts. But before that, it can be a struggle to grind through this line, which is why it's up at S tier. I think A tier, just because of how good this line gets once you get up into the high tiers of it. And finally, our last line, the Hsiang, the Pan-European, or the Pan-Asians. This one going down at D tier. I feel like I don't see these boats ever out there anymore. They're unique. They get deep water torpedoes. They get the ability to run radar as opposed to smoke. Like, they seem like they would be fantastic ships, but I think just the playstyle of our game doesn't really allow them to stretch their legs like they might over on PC. The Pan-European ships, they tend to be an amalgamation of other lines, so they have this weird identity crisis within them to begin with, and then you take that, and then you take away. In this game, it feels like a lot of the time, the destroyer needs to be able to take out the other destroyer. That is one of the key roles of the destroyers, and taking away one of the tools in that chest, the torpedoes, does make it a little worse. It does kind of severely hinder this line. On top of that, you're looking at, like, its tier 7 is the Americans' tier 6. It's a Benson class, and it doesn't really have many advantages over a Benson, and you're then fighting Fletcher classes, which tend to be a bit better. So it feels like you have a power disparity to begin with these boats, and on top of that, there's just better options out there. So Hsiang, that one going down at D. And guys, that is my tier list for the destroyers. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. If you liked the video, go ahead, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. See ya.